and I'm going to be talking about trans representation in the media. So before I get started, I kind of want to go over a few topics because some people don't know all of the vocab I'm going to be using. First word I want to go over is transgender. Someone that's transgender identifies as a gender different than the one that they were assigned at birth. For example, me. I was born female at birth, and about 14, 15 years later, I realized that I identify as male. So transition, there are different types of transition. There's social transition when you change your name or your pronouns, and physical transition that some people choose to go through, which is where you can start hormone therapy or surgeries, whatever that might entail for different people. Trans man is someone that was born female and identifies as male, and trans woman is someone that was born male and identifies as female. I want to talk about the difference between gender and attraction, because those are kind of lumped together sometimes, because not all trans people might identify as gay or bisexual or a lesbian or any of the other different sexualities out there. I want to talk about the word cisgender, which is someone that identifies as the gender they were assigned at birth. So if someone was born female and their whole life they're like, yes, I'm a girl, then that person's cisgender. The last vocab word that I want to go over is gender neutral or gender non-binary. Someone that doesn't quite identify as strictly male or strictly female, sometimes somewhere in the middle. So I got involved in transgender media when I was a sophomore in high school, and I was questioning my own gender identity and how I saw myself. I wrote a short story called Ross, and somehow it got made into a short film. I directed and produced this, and it premiered at the Wayland High School Film Festival about 2 years ago. This film was very positively received. Everyone there was super supportive of this, and it was an amazing night. So this gave me the power to put it on YouTube. Since Ross has been put on YouTube, it has gotten nearly 500,000 views, which is amazing and overwhelming. And all of the comments and emails that I've gotten have been about people saying how much this film has affected them and how it's so great that they have a character that they can relate to. So it got me thinking, what other characters are there for people to relate to? And I looked it up. So GLAAD did a study, and over 100 storylines, out of the over 100 storylines or episodes with trans characters since 2002, 54% of those characters were portrayed negatively. Trans characters are often portrayed as sex workers, as villains, as devious, as trying to be manipulative, which is really hurtful for trans people to see. 35% were a bit better, but still problematic, and only 12% were really accurate. Can anyone guess how many trans characters were in movies released in 2014? You can shout it out now. 1, I got 1. 0? 0. There were no trans characters in mainstream movies that were released in 2014. And there were no non-binary characters, not even any that I could get onto my presentation because there are none in mainstream media. There are a few trans characters though, and I kind of want to talk about the ones that I have in my slides. So the first one is Brandon Teena. He was a prominent character in the movie Boys Don't Cry that premiered in the 90s. There's Adam, who was a trans teen, which was great to see because you don't really see many trans teens in the media. He was on Degrassi for a few years. Unique, who was a trans woman who was on Glee for a few years. And the character Moira, who is the star of a show Transparent, which has recently been renewed for a second season. So these characters are great, but they're all played by not trans people. I want to talk about my two favorite characters, Cole, who's from the show The Fosters, who is a trans man playing a trans male character, and Sophia, who's from Orange is the New Black. She's played by Laverne Cox, who is an amazing woman who happens to be trans and has been on the cover of Time and is in Time's 100 most influential people of the year, which is pretty impressive. There aren't just characters, though. There are some trans celebrities making waves. Janet Mock is a New York Times bestseller for her book Redefining Realness, talking about her experiences as a trans woman. There's Chaz Bono, who's an activist, who you might know him as the son of Sonny and Cher. There's Balian Buschbaum. I'm not entirely sure how to say his name. He's a German Olympic pole vaulter, which is amazing to see. You don't really see very many trans athletes in the media. I don't know. Oh, there we go. There's Carmen Carrera, who's a model who gained popularity when people advocated for her to be the first trans Victoria's Secret model. There's Jazz Jennings, who's 14, and she's a prominent trans activist and is actually going to have her own reality TV show this summer. So recently in the media, trans topics have been a big issue. Bruce Jenner recently came out about 2 weeks ago as a trans woman, and 17 million people watched that. That's amazing. 17 million people. I thought it was really cool to see someone come out that everyone knows, because a lot of people know who Bruce Jenner is. He's very prominent, and I thought that that was really cool to see. Something else that's recently happened is Aidan Dowling, who's a trans activist. He might be the first trans man on the cover of Men's Health magazine. Men's Health is holding this contest called The Ultimate Man, where guys can submit a photo and a short bio, and people can vote and see who they want to be on the cover of the magazine. And he is in first place with over 4 times as many votes as the person in second place, which I think is really cool. But why does this matter? Why does it matter to see trans people in the media and seeing trans people identifying proud? It matters because of people like Leila Alcorn, Blake Brockton, and the other trans teens that commit suicide every year. Statistically, of trans youth, 40% will attempt suicide before they turn 18. That's a staggering statistic. I can't even comprehend how many that is and how many friends I know that have suffered because of ignorance. The society that we live in doesn't really talk about gender and gender identity and what it means to be trans and that it's okay. And I think that by having more representation and having more people talk about it, we can change that. If more people are aware, it just becomes commonplace. So I think that we should keep talking about it. I think that we should have more representation, not just for the people that are trans, but for people that have trans friends, trans family, just someone in their community, so they can know that this isn't a terrifying thing. This is commonplace. I know trans people in communities all around us. So I know of a few trans people that are trying to make their own representation. There's a web series called Brothers, which is made by some trans men about trans characters living their lives just as people. And I think that that's really cool to see, because you don't really see many trans people where their identities aren't the central point of their storylines. There are also a lot of trans YouTubers like FTM Transtastic, Our Life is Trans, My Generation, and a bunch of others that are great to see because trans people get the opportunity to see people like themselves just talking and living. So here's what you can do to help. You can talk. You can bring this up in conversation, talk about gender and gender identity and what a mess it is and how different people relate to themselves and what it really means to be trans or what it really means to be a boy or a girl or somewhere in between. I think that we can really change the world and make this less of a stigmatized issue by talking. So let's start talking.